with that being said, man, let's get into this first topic today. And we want to talk about, man, were the three biggest positional needs for the Pittsburgh Steelers going into the draft right now, man. Just kind of how we feel about them as a whole. Because we've obviously talked about certain elements of it. We talked about certain players that we're, potentially looking at, but we really haven't said what we view as this team's biggest needs. Now, NFL.com, they had an article where they essentially listed quarterback as the number one need. They said defensive back as the second need, and then they put wide receiver as the third need, if I remember correctly.
These guys are clowns. Is this how we're sitting right now?
Yeah, this article had just came out. I think it was like a day or two ago. Yeah, and that's kind of how they viewed it. They was like quarterback was definitely the number one need. Then it was DB, mainly emphasis on safety, and then they said wide receiver as the third one. Yeah.
Okay. DB in terms of safety. All right, that makes sense.
And let us know in the chat also, man. How would you list the top three needs for the Steelers right now? What positions they are, and please label them so we can know. Like, okay, this is number one, this is number two, this is number three. So we'll obviously react to that as well. But Deke, man, how would you, if you had to put your top three, starting at the third most important, what would you say that is for you?
You got to let me talk this out a little bit. So,
oh Lord, here he goes, man. He about to get janky.
The roster as is right now.
As is.
Tuitt back or no? That's the X factor for me.
What is the roster right now? Is Tuitt on the roster or is he's not on the roster?
Contract. Yes.
Okay, so if he's on the roster, we're looking at him as he's on the roster. That's all I'm saying. Until new information arises.
Okay. As we're sitting right now. Mm-hmm. Then I'm actually. What was their list? It was QB, receiver, and defensive back. All right, I think they hit two of them.
QB, DB, defensive back. I mean, QB, DB, wide receiver. Excuse me.
Okay, I think they hit two of them then. Okay. I got receiver then as my third. Okay. We need a third receiver. We need just some depth because all we have right now is Claypool, Deontay.
Yeah.
I'm looking at our depth chart, and they got Cody White listed as our next receiver after those two. Oh, no. I'm sorry. They have Anthony Miller, actually. Okay. So after Anthony Miller, it's Cody White at 4 and like Gunner, Sims, Rico, Bussy. We need to upgrade that room, and we've talked about it. Mm-hmm. Whether either signing a dude, we got to draft maybe a guy or two as well. So that is, for me, number 3.
Okay. For me, I would say my third thing is cornerback. I enjoy the fact that because I like the fact we have Levi Wallace. I like the fact
specifically corner, not defensive back.
This is my third need, specifically cornerback, because I do think that Levi Wallace, Akello Witherspoon, Cam Sutton, I think all three of those guys are good players. I think all three of those guys played well last year, and I think they will play well again this year. My problem is none of those guys have proven to this point in their career that they are cornerback number one and that they can match up with the elite talent or at least take away the next tier of elite receivers. Like we haven't seen that from those guys. We said with Akello, when we talked about him the other day, we said, man, they called him, the Trayvon Diggs for us, right? In the sense that, yes, he has created some splash plays, but at the same time, we haven't really seen him in a lockdown role just yet. And even last year, when we were reviewing his play, we said that down the stretch, it picked up a lot more in contrast to earlier when he had first got here. To me, I just would like to, I think that it would be different if we had a little bit more high-end talent, a guy that we felt either is cornerback one right now or we think that he has all the intangibles coming out of college, right? We talked about Sauce Gardner and guys like him, and we're like, man, even though we have the guys that we have at corner, we would still love if he was a part of that group because it would just solidify it and really put the rest of this stuff to bed. So that's why for me, I have corner as my third, biggest position need for the Steelers. Okay. So what's your second one?
Man, I might want to swap this one with my third, but this is on the list, kind of. It's linebacker, but it's just predicated on Devin Bush, really.
No,
it's
I
just your
understand that,
confidence level in him.
Yeah.
Because we got our two guys, in Miles Jack and Devin Bush, as we sit right here. Dude, really talented guy. It's just, how do you feel like Devin Bush is going to do this season? If the Steelers organization is really confident in him for whatever reason, then we don't need to worry about this But at the same time, for me, we do, whether it's in the first round, second round, third round, just get another guy in there for some type of competition, just to maybe light a fire under Bush's ass. But yeah, that's who I got second. But maybe I kind of want to move to the third, just because as we sit right now, not a position where we're actually trying to get it's more like we're getting a guy for competition. Whereas wide receiver 3, we're literally drafting someone to kind of be a starter for us. Not drafting or signing, just bringing in a guy that would be a starter. Whereas right now, I think we're willing to roll with those two. So I'm actually going to move them to 3. I'll put receiver at my second one.
Okay.
I'll swap that.
Okay. The little flipperooski. I like it. Like it. So for me, man, my number 2 is wide receiver. I thought about linebacker as well. The reason I didn't go linebacker, I do think that Miles Jack is going to help out this inside group in a major way. And I also think that Devin, feeling the pressure of this being a contract year for him, he is going to step up his play also. I also think that Miles Jack being there is going to rub off on Devin. He's going to see, what it takes to be successful in this league. He's going to see the way that you need to operate in the film room, on the practice field, and things like that. And I think that's going to really benefit Devin, along with, as we're sitting here today, Tuitt is on the roster. So with me, I'm taking that same approach that Tuitt is back and available. If he's back and available, that will help out Devin. That will help out, the inside part of that defense. And that's why I didn't want to put the inside linebackers up here. So for me, I put wide receiver as the second most important need right now, because yes, we do have Deontay and we do have Chase. And both of those guys played well last year, but it was a little bit of a mixed bag, right? We thought that, both of those guys, even though they played well, they did kind of fall short of the expectations that we had for them in terms of either one of those guys taking that step to truly be wide receiver 1. I do think that when you're talking about the Steelers offense, you're going to need a third receiver, and we legitimately do not have that guy right now. And the third receiver in this league is essentially another starting player, just based on the amount of times that you're using 3 wide receiver sets. And I would have had this move a little bit higher, but I still lean on the fact that we're going to try to run our offense through Najee. And by doing that, we're going to have Pat Freiermuth on the field a lot more than he has been in the past. And I just think for Pat, he should be able to alleviate some of that pain of not having a bona fide third receiver. But I do think we need to do something there, whether we're drafting a guy or going for agents like we talked about last episode, just to solidify that group in a sense. So that's ultimately where I'm at with that wide receiver group being the number 2 need for my perspective, man.
For sure. All right, then 1.
So
we agree on 1.
So hold on, before we get to 1, let me just go through the chat real quick and see, what they got to say real quick. All right, because we got to give a little drama, right, before we read our number 1 off. See what the people say. So OMG Reptar, he says safety is the number 1 need, wide receiver is the number 2 need, and he has corner as the number 3 need. Okay, I like that. D Rockden says wide receiver at number 1. Cornerback is the second need, and then safety is the third need. David Stroop has wide receiver at 1, defensive line at 2, and then DB at 3. Let's go UW. What up, Let's Go UW? Of course, he says inside linebacker. I see you still angling for your boy Chad Muma. I see. Trust me, you ain't fooling nobody around here, baby. I'm on the Chad Muma train. I'm with you, okay? But he says inside linebacker is number 1, interior D line as number 2, and then wide receiver as 3. Now, this is where we get a little more parity. Robert Hostler says wide receiver as the first need, DB is the second need, and then he puts quarterback as the third, because I hadn't seen any quarterback list up here just yet. All right. Matt Nerdy says QB is the number 1 need, offensive line the number 2 need, and then linebacker the third need. Okay. And then Carmichael, the sports guru, he kept it clean for us. He says quarterback is the number 1 need, quarterback is the number 2 need, and then quarterback being the number 3 need. So I could definitely understand, his sentiment right there. And then Lovin' Madden, a.k.a. Stephanie Ramirez, up early on that west side. She says number 1, defensive tackle, number 2, wide receiver, and number 3, offensive line. Okay. I like it. So I feel like wide receiver and D-line were definitely constants in this thing. Safety saw a little bit more, and then we started to get a little bit more quarterback action towards the end of this thing. But for you, Deke, what would you say is the Steelers' number one position need right now, man?
It's got to be safety. So that's why I agree with the NFL. If they're just talking defensive backs and including safety, we don't have one right now. I mean, unless you think Carl Joseph can just step in and replace what Terrell Edmonds was doing. I think that's why we're talking to Tyrann Mathieu. Supposedly we have a deal in place for Terrell Edmonds too. So that's the number one thing we just don't have a starting strong safety across from Edmonds. And yeah, I mean, some people are bringing up quarterback, but it's weird. It's probably predicated on just whether or not you believe that we can win with the quarterbacks in place.
Yeah.
Because, we could upgrade the quarterback position in theory, but what's that going to take? That's going to take a trade. That's going to take us drafting in the first round. And what does that mean for our team building, and just the overall roster heading into the season? I don't think it's that beneficial. That's why I don't really have it as a position of need here, because I think we can win with what we got. So safety, we just need a starter. It's pretty much that simple for me.
Yeah. For me, man, I'm right there with you. I put strong safety as well, because we do not have that guy. You're right. We have Minkah Fitzpatrick, who's elite, who's a high-end safety. We know what he does, but right now he does not have a Robin. Whether we're talking Edmonds, whether we're talking Tyrann Mathieu, whether you're talking Landon Collins, Keanu O'Neal, any of these guys, whether we're talking drafting a guy, we currently do not have that player available to us right now. And if you go Carl Joseph, we number one know you have the injury concerns, but also he hasn't really had, quality tape these past couple of years because of him being out. So there's still a big question mark around him in that avenue. And then when you think of Trey Norwood, he played well at times, but we also, we're a little nervous at times, if you're talking about him being out there full time at that safety position. So for me, man, I definitely think that's the most important need right now. Yeah, because at wide receiver, I'm like, you still have two quality starters in Chase and Deontay. When you talk about cornerback, you have quality players out there. When you talk about inside linebacker, D-line, you have quality players. But right now, at the strong safety position, we just don't have that guy available to us right now. So that's why for me, man, I definitely have strong safety as the number one positional need, baby.
Where would you have D-line if Tuitt wasn't back?
Oh,
then you have Wormley, Loudermilk.
Right.
Do you put them up in the third and bounce corners?
I probably do, yeah, because right now I'm leaning on Tuitt being back along with Cam Hayward already being in there. We know Cam and Tuitt together, that is a top-notch combo. But when you take away Tuitt, you have an aging Tyson Alualu. It makes me a little bit more concerned. Granted, we do think that Loudermilk is going to take a next step. But still, him taking the next step compared to where Tuitt currently is, I still think there's a significant gap there. And if you don't have that type of player out there for you in terms of a Stephon Tuitt, I do think you're still going to have some issues as it pertains to the run game. Just because with Miles Jack, even though he plays downhill and he's really good against the run, he's still not a shock and lock, just bruising up these old linemen. He beats them with, good technique, being in position, anticipation, and just his quicks. But when you talk about having these D linemen up on him, that could, cause his game to be a little bit hindered in a sense. So yeah, if Tuitt is not available, if Tuitt is not back, then I definitely move, the interior D lineman part. I probably put that at 2 in front of wide receiver. Because like I said, at the end of the day, you still have your two quality guys at wide receiver, and you still can get away with it by using Pat Freiermuth as a pseudo third receiver in a sense. But with that D lineman, if we don't have Tuitt out there, we are at a little bit of a issue, because we do have smaller interior linebackers. Even if you draft a Chad Muma, he's still going to be on the lighter side. We talked about Nakobe Dean. He's still on the smaller side. Unless you're going Leo Chenal, you're not really going to have a guy that is a traditional stack, shock and lock type LB in the interior part of your defense. So you're going to definitely feel that loss of Tuitt a lot more. So I would definitely put interior D lineman as the number 2 thing if Tuitt isn't back. But I'm hoping that my man Tuitt is back, and as long as he's still on the roster, I'm going to keep operating with that assumption.
Would it change our approach, though, in terms of who we bring in? Like, will we just stick with Wormley and Loudermilk and then just focus on nose tackle, though, instead? Like, would we be looking to sign another like edge guy for that 3-4 on the defensive line, or are we just sticking
Honestly,
with Wormley Loudermilk?
honestly, I'll be looking to bring in a 3-4 edge, the DN dude. You know what I mean? Because that's what Tuitt plays. He's the 5 technique, and then when you go to sub package ball, he bumps in to become a 3 technique. That's Wormley. That's Loudermilk. At nose, I'm confident in Tyson because as long as Tyson is healthy, I know what he's going to give me. I know how consistent he plays and how he ragdolls a lot of these centers. That was another element that was missing the majority of last season. I would feel fine, rolling with him. And we also brought back Montravius Adams. He's another guy that I feel like can play over the nose and still be fine. We also know that he showed flashes at times last year, bumping out there to the 3 technique. But none of those guys are to it. And that's, kind of how I ended. It's like, man, Tuitt is a special player when he is healthy, when he is motivated. And we saw that, prior to last season when he went and had the double-digit sacks. We saw how dominant he was at times. He really put it together and was a lot more consistent. To me, I don't think we have an interior D lineman outside of Cam Hayward that can give you what Tuitt has given us when he's been healthy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, so that's our list.
Absolutely, man. But I like it, though, man. I like that. And I'm trying to think, man. Let me see if anyone else came through and said anything. If we had anything different. 2 cents warranted. He said wide receiver. He said, wide receiver is the first one. He put nose tackle as the second one, and then DB as the third one. Okay, I could definitely understand that. If he's looking at, Tyson saying that he's a little bit older, maybe not as high on Montravius, then sure, I could definitely see that. But yeah, I don't see anything else.